Well, first of all, can I say that it's my privilege to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really happy to take this opportunity to say a bit about this forthcoming book. It's called Beijing from Below, and it is based on research I've been doing since 2007. So over a long period of time, research that started as what I thought then was an oral history about everyday life in one of Beijing's most disadvantaged remaining old neighbourhoods in the centre of the capital, just literally the southwestern corner of Tiananmen Square. And over the years I got to know a number of local families there who were born and brought up in the neighbourhood or who married into the neighbourhood. The oldest person I knew was an elderly woman who died in 2011, aged 87, who I call Old Mrs. Gao, who moved into the neighbourhood in 1937 when she married into the neighbourhood and never left. She'd never been on a train. She was completely illiterate and lived a life of incredible hardship and uncertainty and precarity in very, very congested and unsanitary, I would have said unsanitary conditions. And by that I mean no sanitation, no hot water, no showers, to this very day. And so the book, the large part of the book is chapters that are based on individual family stories that are the result of my compilations of recordings I've made, of notes I've taken, just sitting with these people, hanging out and chatting. And over the years, none of it is not a conventional oral history, because none of it is based on formal interviews with mics at all. And when I started the project, together with a local photographer called Zhao Tielin, who died also prematurely of cancer in 2010, if I remember correctly. I may have got the date a bit wrong. But when I started the project, it seemed to have nothing to do with gender. So I sort of thought of it as something that was quite different from my previous projects. I won't now go into why I started it. That's another history. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say that gender insisted on finding me through the project. And because everyday life in the neighbourhood turned out to be extremely segregated in all sorts of ways, along pretty conventional, traditional, quote-unquote, lines, and expectations of children and children's filial support of their parents had profoundly gendered dimensions, which I hadn't anticipated when I started the project. So at the end of the project, it turns out to be almost as much about gender as about anything else. If there's a single main argument about the book, it really is that history cannot be told through a single narrative, that history is necessarily multiple, and that if you want a story of the transformation of China's capital since the early 1950s, through the experiences and memories of some of its most impoverished people, then this is it. And what you get is a story that is not there in the history textbooks. It reveals a kind of narrative of China's transformation over the 20th century that is radically different, because it's told through the voices of these very, very disadvantaged people. Well, that's correct. I completely agree with the way that you put it. It doesn't equate to westernization. I mean, to call what is happening in China now in the women's movement and with feminist activism the effect of westernization, I think is to profoundly kind of misconstrue the sort of multiple, multi-layered circulation of ideas between China, Japan and that part of the world and Europe and America that has been going on really since the early part of the 20th century. And I mean, just to go over some of the points that I made yesterday, the book, The Birth of Chinese Feminism, which is about He Yin-zhen, the most extraordinary anarcho-feminist, who together with her partner in 1907 in Tokyo published a journal called Natural Justice in English. This journal, this is in 1907, before there were any kind of telecommunications, before it was easy to gain access to information about what was happening beyond the boundaries of Japan and China, for that matter. But the book is a collection of translations, annotated translations and analyses of the texts that she and her partner and some others at the turn of the century effectively published, which demonstrates an understanding of what we call gender equality. She had another term for it, but the political economy, if you like, of gender subordination and of the needs of human emancipation that were, I mean, drew on ideas that referred to the parliamentary system in Finland, and also that made no, I mean, the ideas that are articulated in her texts are truly original, they are imaginative, they cannot be located either in the West or simply in China because they draw on so many different currents. And I should say into the bargain that Natural Justice and He Yin-zhen and her partner were responsible for the first translation of Marx's Communist Manifesto into Chinese. This is in an anarcho-feminist journal, which, you know, many people might be quite surprised at. I think for many, many reasons. I mean, just to set the record straight, most of my, I mean, gender has always been, and gender equality has always been at the heart of my intellectual concerns, my political concerns, and indeed my social concerns and my concerns as a parent, as a mother of daughters. And so it's always been there at the heart of my concerns. Nevertheless, it's only relatively recently that I've begun to hook up with or link up with young feminist activists like Lee Meitzer. I guess, I mean, to be more generous to my own record, since the late 1980s, I've had quite close links with an earlier generation of feminists who then worked with the Women's Federation and who were very central in setting up the women's studies courses and so on and so forth in China. I think that the links between, I mean, I think that activism and research at their best can really sort of nurture each other so that activism can feed off the kinds of theorized and you know, clearly theoretically articulated concerns that good research can come up with. By no means all research. We know very well that there's a lot of rather bad research out there. And in return, researchers like myself, I mean, can learn a huge amount from activists to our own benefit. So I think, you know, I would say that there's a, you know, that ideally there's the researchers, academic researchers and activists are not the same. And I think it's important that activists, serious and true to themselves as activists, and researchers are serious and true to their calling, if you want to call it, as researchers. But ideally, the links between them, the intersections between them, really benefit each other in ways that I think, you know, that this conference that you have organised has shown can be wonderfully exciting.